This veteran thought his father left him nothing but an old barn, but when he pulled up a loose floorboard after the funeral, he uncovered a secret so powerful it changed everything he thought he knew about his family. A hidden key, a letter, and a legacy buried beneath years of dust and silence. Stay with me, because what he finds in that barn isn't just inheritance. It's the truth his father never said out loud. Before we dive in, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? And don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow's episode is truly mind-blowing. Let's get started. The barn smelled like old hay and forgotten summers. Lucas Hayes hadn't stepped foot in it since the day he left for basic training 26 years ago. Now, with his father's funeral behind him and the cold Montana wind rattling the tin roof, he found himself kneeling on the same dusty floorboards he'd once played on as a boy. The place looked smaller than he remembered, but grief has a way of making everything feel tighter. He didn't cry at the service. He hadn't cried in years. A war-hardened vet turned mechanic. Lucas had seen his share of loss, but standing there, in the barn where his father once taught him how to fix a broken axle and calm a wild colt, he felt something crack quietly, inwardly. Everyone else had gone home. His brothers left with the inheritance trucks, land, titles. Lucas, he got the barn, just the barn. Figures, he muttered, pulling back a tarp. Dust billowed up like memory. Then his hand caught something strange. One of the floorboards shifted under his knee, not loose, but lifted, deliberate. He stared at it, and for the first time all day, something besides grief stirred in his chest. Something like curiosity, something like hope. Lucas ran his fingers along the edges of the board. It was smooth, worn down by time, but there just beneath his palm was a faint groove, a seam. He shifted his weight and pressed. The plank gave slightly with a hollow thunk. His heart picked up. He glanced around the barn like someone might be watching, though he knew the only audience was the late autumn wind whistling through the slats. With a grunt, he slid his fingers beneath the board and pried it up. Beneath it, a square compartment had been carved into the foundation. Dust coated the contents inside, but even through the dirt, he could make out the shape of a small wooden box. He reached in slowly, his breath catching like a boy about to uncover treasure. The box was heavier than expected. He set it on the barn floor and opened it with cautious fingers. Inside was a folded oilcloth and a yellowing envelope with his name Lucas, written in his father's shaky script. His throat tightened. He unfolded the cloth first. Nestled within was a brass key, old but polished, still warm from the insulation of the box. Then, with shaking hands, he opened the envelope. "If you're reading this, it means I couldn't tell you in person." His father's voice might as well have spoken those words aloud. Lucas could hear it, the same gruff but tender tone that used to lecture him over coffee before school. "You always had your mother's sense of heart. I knew if anyone found this place, it'd be you. The barn was never just a barn. Look where the ground meets its reflection. The rest will make sense." Lucas lowered the letter. His hands were trembling. "What the hell, Dad?" he whispered. He looked around the barn again. Every nail, every beam now pulsed with purpose. Where the ground meets its reflection, it sounded poetic or like a riddle, but it didn't matter. It was enough to make him dig. He searched for hours, sifting through hay bales, knocking on the walls, examining corners. At one point, he laughed out loud, shaking his head. "This is ridiculous." But then he saw it. In the far back corner, beneath a stack of old crates, the concrete floor was cracked just slightly. Not natural, not from age. He hauled the crates aside, knelt, and pressed his palm against the cold concrete. It shifted. A hidden door. It wasn't elaborate, just a concrete slab with a metal ring, but it led somewhere. When Lucas heaved it open, a stale gust of air met him. Beneath the hatch, a narrow stairwell disappeared into darkness. For a moment, he just stared into the hole. Dust floated like ghost breath in the beam of his flashlight. The steps were made of old wood, uneven and creaky. He could have stopped there. But something in his father's words pushed him forward. One hand on the wall, one clutching the flashlight, Lucas descended into the hidden cellar. The room below was small, maybe 10 feet by 10. The walls were packed earth, supported by wooden beams like a forgotten root cellar. But the contents. Shelves lined the space, stacked with sealed boxes, folders, and mason jars filled with God knows what. But what caught Lucas's eye was the center crate. Unlike the rest, it was clean, labeled simply L.H. His initials. Lucas opened it slowly. Inside were documents, deeds, ownership certificates, a USB stick taped to a note card, and one small, leather-bound journal. The first page made his breath catch. Hayes Family Trust, principal owner Lucas Hayes. His knees nearly buckled. This wasn't junk. This wasn't memorabilia. This was everything. The family business, the land, the holdings all listed under his name, quietly, privately, legally. His father hadn't forgotten him. He hadn't shut him out of the will. He'd hidden the truth where no one else would look beneath the floorboards of a barn only Lucas had ever cared about. Lucas slumped against the wall. The dust didn't matter. The cold didn't matter. His whole life, he'd carried the weight of not being the favorite, of serving his country while others stayed behind and reaped the rewards. But now he saw it clearly. His father hadn't left him behind. He'd trusted him most. Lucas sat on the dirt floor of the hidden room, the silence around him pressing like a second skin. His flashlight cast shaky shadows against the walls, flickering over documents that could change everything. For a long moment, he just breathed. Then he opened the leather-bound journal. The first entry was dated 12 years ago. Started transferring holdings under Lucas's name today, quietly, carefully. They'll never look in the barn, they've already dismissed it as worthless. But Lucas never stopped coming back. Lucas blinked hard. His father had been planning this for over a decade. While the rest of the family bickered over control and image, the old man had tucked the future away right here, beneath old hay and forgotten beams. He flipped through pages, accounts, meetings, conversations, all meticulously recorded. Then he spotted it. Taped inside the back cover was a small voice recorder, dented, scratched, but intact. His hands fumbled for the play button. Static buzzed. Then, "If you're hearing this, it means I didn't get to tell you face to face. I wish I had. But there's something you need to know." His father's voice filled the cramped space, warm and steady despite age. "They were never going to share it with you. Your brothers, they were always after the name, not the work. But you gave your life to something bigger. I watched you build yourself from nothing, and I knew when the time came, you'd do the right thing." Lucas pressed the recorder to his chest, holding the voice like a memory. "This company, the land, it's not just property, it's our story, and it's yours now. I left them the front-facing pieces to let them have the headlines, but the engine, the heart of it, that's been under your name for years." Lucas wiped his eyes with the sleeve of his jacket. Then the voice added, quieter now, "If something happens, they'll come sniffing. They'll try to bury you in doubt, but trust the barn. It's always kept our truth safe." The message clicked off, and for a full minute, Lucas just sat there in the dark, letting it wash over him. Then came the sound, "Tires on gravel." He froze, carefully. He crept back up the stairs, leaving the hidden chamber untouched for now. He peered through a gap in the barn wall, and sure enough, a black SUV was pulling up. Dust still clung to its sides, and the license plate was unmistakably local. Out stepped his older brother, Bryce, and behind him Cassidy, their stepmother, impeccably dressed as always, sunglasses on even though the clouds hung low. Lucas ducked behind a beam, heart pounding. They didn't approach the barn. Instead, they walked the perimeter, stopping occasionally to look out over the fields like they were surveying land already theirs. "I told you," Bryce muttered, "he wouldn't find anything. Dad gave him this dump out of guilt. Cassidy sniffed. He's a good soldier, not a businessman. That barn won't feed him for long. Lucas felt his jaw clench. Then Cassidy added, more softly, we'll make a bid on it soon. He'll fold. He always does. Lucas could hear his father's voice again, clear in his mind. They'll come sniffing. Trust the barn. The pair walked back to the car, unaware of the eyes watching from the shadows. As the SUV pulled away, Lucas stepped out from behind the beam and looked up at the rafters, old dust dancing in the light like ghosts come to bear witness. Everything had changed. He wasn't just grieving anymore. He was standing at the edge of something massive, and someone was already trying to steal it from him. As night fell, Lucas sat in the farmhouse with the lights off, documents spread across the table, the recorder beside his mug of cold coffee. His mind raced with everything he'd seen, everything his father had prepared. It wasn't just a will. It was a plan, and it wasn't finished. That night, sleep didn't come easy. Lucas paced the creaking floorboards of the farmhouse, every footstep echoing through the empty rooms. The old radiator ticked, and outside, the wind had picked up, brushing against the windows like it wanted in. On the table, the documents lay open like a secret too loud to ignore. He'd spent most of his life believing he was an afterthought, the quiet son, the one who left for the military and returned only for holidays and funerals. He'd missed birthdays, harvests, weddings. He'd missed his father's final days. And yet, his name had been on every page in that box. The truth pressed down on him like a weight, but this time, it didn't crush it anchored. His father hadn't just left him something. He'd entrusted him with everything. Lucas lit the fireplace and sat in front of it, staring into the flames. His father's voice echoed again in his memory. Trust the barn. It's always protected what mattered. For years, Lucas had seen the barn as a relic, a dying limb of a ranch that barely kept the family fed in its final years. But now, he saw it differently. It wasn't just storage, it was sanctuary, vault, witness. It was legacy. By dawn, the sky had turned that soft, steel blue Montana was famous for. Lucas grabbed a thermos of black coffee, slipped on his father's old flannel jacket from the back of the door, and walked out toward the barn again. This time, he didn't hesitate. Dust no longer felt like neglect. It felt like memory. As he opened the trap door and climbed back into the underground chamber, the musty air no longer choked him. It welcomed him. He went through every box, cataloging everything: land deeds, ownership contracts, audio recordings, old receipts, photographs, and sealed envelopes, each one connected to the family's real assets, all under his name. In one folder, he found detailed letters between his father and a local attorney dated years back. In them, his father carefully outlined how to legally separate the public face of the company from its real ownership. The old man had outwitted them all. Lucas let out a breathless laugh. He could almost see his father's crooked smile, the one he'd flash right after pulling off a trick shot at the pool table. "You old fox," Lucas whispered. But there was more. Tucked inside the final envelope was a letter written in pen, not typed, and clearly not meant for lawyers. "Son, I know I wasn't always good at saying what mattered. I showed it the only way I knew how, through work, through building something with my hands. This ranch, the land, the barn. I know you loved it too. And when you left for the service, I knew I had to protect your place in it, even if you weren't here to see it. By the time you read this, I'll be gone. But I hope you know you were never second in my eyes. You were the one I trusted to carry it forward. The others, they were always looking for an inheritance, but you were building a legacy long before you knew it." Lucas set the letter down, heart full and shattered all at once. Every bitter memory, every time he thought he'd been passed over, ignored, forgotten, reshaped itself in that moment. His father's silence hadn't been neglect. It had been strategy, protection. He hadn't been excluded. He'd been chosen. Later that afternoon, Lucas stood in the barn's doorway, looking out over the frost-kissed fields. The wind had died down, replaced by stillness, a rare kind of quiet that felt earned. He looked down at the key still in his pocket and turned it over in his hand. The brass glinted in the sun, and for the first time, he didn't feel like a stranger on the land. He felt like the owner, like his father's son, and he was ready for what came next. By the next morning, something in Lucas had shifted. Not just emotionally, not just mentally. It was deeper than that, like a gear had finally clicked into place after grinding for years. He stood in front of the bathroom mirror, the same one his father once shaved in before every sunrise, and stared at his reflection. The lines on his face weren't just age, they were earned. He poured himself a mug of coffee and laid out the documents on the kitchen table. Every signature, every notary stamp, every title transfer, all legal, all leading to one undeniable truth. Lucas Hayes was the rightful owner of the Hayes family land and holdings. But ownership wasn't enough. His stepmother had already sent a message the night before, short, biting and cold as ice. "We're meeting with the estate lawyer at 10 Please don't embarrass yourself by showing up." Lucas read it twice, then calmly slid every document into a worn leather folder and zipped it shut. "You're going to regret that," he muttered. By 9:50, Lucas walked into the downtown legal offices in boots still stained from barn dust. Heads turned. The receptionist paused mid-sentence. His stepmother, Cassidy, sat at the polished conference table, flanked by Bryce and the younger brother. Dean. Her smile tightened the moment she saw him. "Well," she said, like a cat greeting a bird that had wandered too close, "you look rustic." Lucas said nothing. He placed the folder on the table and sat down. The lawyer cleared his throat awkwardly. "Mr. Hayes, Lucas, we were just about to begin." Cassidy gave a little laugh. "He won't need to be here long." Lucas unzipped the folder and began laying out the papers, one by one, calm, steady, each one louder than any insult ever thrown at him. The lawyer's eyebrows arched as he picked up the top sheet. Then the room fell still. The documents were airtight incorporation certificates, proof of legal transfers, recorded shareholder agreements, all pointing to Lucas as the majority owner of Hayes Holdings. The ranch, the properties, even the equipment leases. Bryce's face flushed crimson. Dean leaned forward. This can't be real." Lucas met his eyes. "It's real. Dad signed everything, years ago." Cassidy stood abruptly. "This is a stunt. Those are forgeries." He was sick. Delusional. Lucas slid forward a notarized letter signed and witnessed outlining the timeline of the trust. "Try again," he said quietly. The lawyer adjusted his glasses, reading carefully. "Everything appears to be in legal order. As of this, it seems Mr. Lucas Hayes has full control of all holding assets." Silence. You could hear the tick of the clock on the wall like it was marking the end of an era. Bryce slammed his palm on the table. "You were never the one he trusted. You weren't here." Lucas didn't flinch. "I was serving," he said, "and he knew where to find me when it mattered." Cassidy's lips trembled not with sadness, but fury. "You'll regret crossing me." Lucas stood, tucking the documents back into the folder. "Already did. Every time I stayed silent." He turned to leave, the echo of his boots like thunder in the marble hall. Then the lawyer who had once read his father's will called out after him, "Mr. Hayes, your father would be proud." Lucas paused, just long enough to nod. "He already told me?" As he stepped out into the sunlight, the air smelled of dust, old battles, and something new. Something like victory. But not the loud kind. The kind that rises quiet and strong like a barn left standing after the storm. Days passed. The buzz from the legal victory faded, but something deeper had taken root in Lucas. He no longer moved like a man surviving on habit. He woke before sunrise, not out of duty, but desire. And each morning, he poured himself a cup of black coffee, stepped onto the porch, and looked out over the land with new eyes. The barn was no longer a relic. It was a beginning. He spent his days cleaning the property, slowly, deliberately, like he was untangling time itself. He patched the holes in the roof with wood he salvaged from the shed, sanded down the old tool bench until it gleamed like it had 30 years ago. Birds nested in the rafters again. Sunlight streamed in through the loft windows like warm breath. Each nail he hammered felt like a stitch across wounds that had long gone unattended. He didn't fix the place out of obligation. He did it because he loved it. Because his father had loved it. One afternoon, as Lucas was repainting the barn doors, he heard the crunch of tires on gravel. A white pickup rolled up the driveway. His younger brother, Dean, stepped out not in a suit this time, but in jeans and a flannel shirt. No smug grin, no legal muscle behind him. Just a man standing with empty hands. Dean held out a small wooden box. I found this in Mom's closet. He said, Dad's watch. She always said he lost it, but Lucas took the box slowly inside. The pocket watch gleamed polished, ticking. He didn't trust her with it, Dean added softly. Lucas didn't say anything at first. He just nodded. He trusted time. Dean let out a breath and looked out at the barn. This place looks different. It is, Lucas replied. For a long moment, the two brothers stood in silence. No apologies, no arguments, just stillness. The kind of stillness that lets truth breathe. When Dean left, Lucas watched the truck disappear over the ridge, and something loosened in his chest. Maybe not forgiveness, but something close. Later that night, Lucas sat on the barn steps, holding the watch in his palm. The ticking was steady quiet, but present, like a heartbeat. He thought of all the years he'd felt unseen, all the times he thought his father had chosen someone else. Now, he understood. His father had seen him all along. He just hadn't shown it in the ways Lucas had expected. Some men leave empires in their names. Some leave barns full of dust, keys, and secrets. Lucas got both. And somehow, that was enough. The wind picked up again, brushing through the tall grass in gentle waves. He looked out over the land not as something to escape, but something to build, something to protect. Not just for himself, but for whatever came next. Spring came slow to Montana that year. The snow didn't so much melt as it gave up, retreating little by little as if the land beneath had earned its right to breathe again. Grass pushed through the soil like it remembered how. The air smelled less like rust, more like rain and renewal. And the barn was alive again. Lucas stood at the edge of the field, a hammer tucked into his belt, a paintbrush still stained in his hand. The sun dipped low behind the ridge, casting long shadows over the hills like arms reaching out to hold the day just a little longer. He looked around and smiled. Not the kind of smile that's wide and loud, but the quiet kind, the kind that comes after storms. Inside, the rafters had been reinforced, the walls repainted in deep red. The loft was cleared, the windows now shining with the soft glow of evening. The old rusted weather vane had been replaced, and it spun gently in the breeze, whispering, "You're home now." Lucas had poured every ounce of grief, rage, and confusion into this place, and somehow, brick by brick, board by board, it had given him something back. Peace. People in town started noticing. A few even stopped by. Thought that place was falling apart. One old neighbor said. Lucas just nodded. They didn't ask how it got fixed. They could see it in the way he carried himself now and the way the barn stood, like it remembered who it was supposed to be. One evening, as the sun bathed the hills in gold, a young boy from town rode up on his bike. "Are you Mr. Hayes?" he asked, shy but curious. Lucas smiled. Just Lucas. The boy nodded toward the barn. "Is it true that your dad left you a secret down there?" Lucas chuckled, kneeling beside him. "You want the truth?" The boy's eyes lit up. "Yeah." Lucas pointed to the barn. "He didn't leave me money, or gold, or some hidden treasure. He left me a chance to remember who I am, to rebuild what matters, to carry the story forward. The boy looked confused for a second, then smiled. That's even cooler. Later that night, Lucas sat on the barn steps again, just as he had that first night with the key in his hand. The stars were out, clear and stubborn. He held the pocket watch his brother had returned to him weeks ago. It still ticked, faithful and soft. He could almost hear his father beside him. "You were always the one with heart, son." Lucas looked out at the hills, the barn glowing behind him, and whispered into the dark, "You trusted me, and I didn't let you down." A breeze picked up, stirring the grass around him, as if the land was listening. Maybe it was, because in the end, Lucas didn't just reclaim a barn. He reclaimed a legacy. And in doing so, he became something his father always believed he could be, but never said out loud. A keeper of truth, a builder of future, a man strong enough to carry love, even after loss. Sometimes, what looks like leftovers is really the most sacred piece of the legacy. Lucas was given the barn, just the barn. To outsiders, it was a dusty, forgotten structure, but hidden within it was truth, trust, and a father's love that couldn't be written in a will. Life doesn't always hand us victory in neat packages. Sometimes it gives us grief, silence, or an old key with no instructions. But buried in the quietest corners are the answers we were always searching for if we're willing to look. Lucas's story reminds us that being overlooked is not the same as being forgotten. You may feel like the one who was left behind, the one who didn't get the promotion, the inheritance, the recognition. But maybe you're the one being prepared for something greater, something only you were meant to find. If this story moved you, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss what's next. Share it with someone who needs to hear that even forgotten barns can hold powerful truths. Thanks for watching. See you in the next story.